Hi everyone, Ravi this side. Welcome to EnggAdda. Today in this video we are going to discuss about the HTTP status codes. So we are going to see what is HTTP status codes, what are the different type of HTTP status code, and we'll practically try to use this HTTP status code in our Spring Boot application. So we'll go through this concept first, and then practically we'll create one Spring Boot application, and there we'll try to practically use this status codes. So let me try to go to the next slide and discuss about the introduction of HTTP status codes. So first of all, what is HTTP status code? Before that, you need to know what is HTTP means. So HTTP stands for the Hypertext Transfer Protocol. It is the foundation of the data communication on www, or you can say World Wide Web. So HTTP stands for the Hypertext Transfer Protocol, which is a protocol, and it is the foundation of the data transfer on the World Wide Web, or you can say Internet. Now, HTTP status codes are the 3-digit numbers returned by a web server in response to a client request. So let's say you have developed one application, and that application is going to be consumed by some client. Okay, in that application you have developed couple of APIs, and the client is going to hit those APIs in order to retrieve the information. Now when the client will hit those API, it will get a response. Okay, and the response could be anything that you are returning on those APIs. But along with the responses, the response also contains the HTTP codes, which is the 3-digit codes. And according to the responses, those codes are designed. Let's say you get the successful response, or the client get the successful response. For that, there is a different HTTP status code, which belongs to the 2xx family. If the client is not able to hit those API, the API is not available, then the client will get different status code that belong to the 400 family. So this is what HTTP status code is. It is a 3-digit number returned by a web server in response to the client request. These codes provide information about the status of the request and help in troubleshooting the issue. So let's say if we are not returning the correct HTTP codes in a response, then we will not able to troubleshoot the issues. So it is very much important to learn about this HTTP status code and use it in a very efficient and effective way to troubleshoot your issues. Okay, so this is the introduction of HTTP status code. Now let me try to go to the next slide and discuss about the categories of HTTP status code. So this HTTP status code are categorized in 5 classes. The first one is informational class, second is successful class, third is redirectional class, the fourth one is client error class, and the fifth one is server error class. Okay, or you can say that these all 5 classes return the following responses. Like the first class, which is 1xx, that means 100, 101, 104, 103. There are different status code in that particular class, and that 1xx class is also called as informational class, or informational responses is returns. Similarly, we have 2xx class, which returns the successful responses. We have 3xx class, which return the redirectional messages. We have 4xx class, which return the client error responses. We have 5xx class, which return the server error responses. So these are the 5 categories of HTTP status code that are present as of now, and that is what we are going to discuss and read out in this video. And practically we'll also try to see those things as well. Now let me try to go to the next slide and discuss about the first category of the HTTP status code, which is informational responses, which is 1xx. These status codes indicate that the server has received the request and is continuing the process. So let's say you have developed one API and client is going to hit that API, and server got those responses from the client, server got the client request, but is still processing the request and it is taking more time, then in that case it gives you this continuation or continuing messages, and in that case we are going to use the 100 HTTP status code. Similarly, for switching protocol we have 101. This is about the first category of the HTTP status code, which is informational category or informational responses category, or you can say 1xx. Now let me try to go to the next slide and discuss about the 100 where we can use it. Okay, the client should continue with its request. This interim response is used to inform the client that the initial part of the request has been received and has not been rejected by the server. The client should continue by sending the reminder of the request, or if the request has already been completed, ignore this response. The server must send a final response after the request has been completed. So this is what the 100 HTTP status code do. When we are going to use the 100, that means, let's say we have one API and the client is going to hit that API. The request hit by the client has reached the server and the server is processing on that request, and it is taking much time for the server to return the response. In that case you have to return the continue, or you have to return the 100 HTTP status code in that API to the client. So this is about the 100 HTTP status code. Now let me try to go to the next slide and discuss about the 2xx group of HTTP status code, which is successful responses. Now these status codes indicate that the request was received, understood and accepted successfully. So let's say I will again bring you the same example. Let's say you have developed an application. In that application you have developed an API, and that client is going to use that API. Client is going to hit that API, and let's say the client hit that API. Now when the client hit that API, that request goes to the server and it was received by the server, it was understood by the server, it was accepted by the server, and then it returns some responses to the client. In that case, that is called successful responses, and that category belong to the 2xx. So let's say client has raised a request, or client has used one API and it has received the response. In that case you have to use this 2xx HTTP status codes. Let me try to discuss about this 200, 201 and 204 HTTP status code in brief. So let's say you have developed one GET API and client hit that and client get the response. In that case you have to use 200 HTTP status code, which is OK status code. Let's say client has developed, you have developed put and post API and client hit that put and post API. In that case client got the response. In that case you have to use this 201, which is created HTTP status code. Now let me try to give you the example of 204, which is no content. So let's say you have developed one delete API, and you are using that delete API to only delete the record from the DB, and you are not returning anything to the client as a response. Then in that case you should use 204 HTTP status code for that API. So these are the various example of 2xx HTTP status code, like 200, 201, 204. Now let me try to go to the next slide and discuss about the 200 HTTP status code. So the 200 HTTP status code, this is the most general status code, most common code used to indicate the success. Okay, so this is the general success status code, you can say. Standard responses for successful HTTP request. The actual response will depend upon the request method used. In a GET request, the response will contain an entity corresponding to the request resource. In a POST request, the response will contain an entity describing or containing the result of the action. So this 200 HTTP status code can be used in the GET or in the POST, and it is mainly used for the indicating the success of that particular response. Okay, so this is about the 200. Now let me try to go to the next slide and discuss about the 201. So this 201 is also known as created, right? So basically it is used for the put and post APIs, where you make the changes. So in the put API or in the post API, you basically what you do, you will try to create something new in the DB, right? So there this 201 HTTP status code is being used. The request has been fulfilled and resulted in a new resource being created. Okay, the newly created resource can be referenced by the URI returned in the entity of the response, with the most specific URI for the resource given by the location header field. The response should include an entity containing the list of the resource characteristics and location from which the user or the user agent can choose the one most appropriate. Okay, so this is basically used for the put and post API, where the resources is being created, you can say. Okay, now let me try to go to the next slide and discuss about the 204. So if you'll go back, you can see that this 204 is for the no content, and I told you about the example of the 204 where we can use it. So basically this is also a successful response, but in the response of that particular request, the server does not return anything in the response, like it is not going to return any entity or anything. So basically this is used for the delete API. So let's say you have created one delete API where you are basically deleting the things from the database and you are not returning anything. So there you can use this 204. The server has fulfilled the request but does not need to return any entity body and might want to return updated meta information. The response may include new or updated meta information in the form of entity headers, which if present should be associated with the requested variant. So this is basically used for that purpose. Now let me try to go to the next slide and discuss about the 3xx family of HTTP status code, which is redirection messages. So these status codes indicate that the further action needs to be taken by the client to complete the request. Okay, so this is basically the redirectional status code, you can say. These status codes indicate that the further action needs to be taken by the client to complete the request. Okay, here are the example of redirectional HTTP status code, like 301, which is moved permanently, 302, which is found, previously it was moved, and 304, which is not modified. Now one by one I am going to discuss this important HTTP status code coming from 3xx family, and let me try to go to the next slide. So here we are picking the 301 first. So status code is 301 and status name is moved permanently. Now in the description you can see that the requested resource has been permanently moved to the new URL. So when the client is getting this 301 HTTP status code, it means that the requested resource by the client has been permanently moved to a new URL. Client should update its bookmark or link to point to the new URL provided in the response. Okay, when a client receives 301 status code, it should automatically redirect to the new URL specified in the response. This helps ensure that the user are redirected to the correct location of the resource, even if they are using an outdated URL. So this is what 301 means. It means that the current URL is moved permanently to the new URL. Okay, and user is able to get those things in the response. The new URL is being displayed to the user in the response. Now let me try to go to the next slide and discuss about the 302. So the status code is 302 and status name is found, and it was missing previously. Like previously it was moved temporarily, but now it is found. The description says that the requested resource has been temporarily moved to a new different URL. client should continue to use the original URL for the future request. So it says that previously the resources was moved, but now it is being used, now it is being in work. Okay, so when a client receives 302 status code, it should automatically redirect to the new URL specified in the response, but it should continue to use the original URL for the future request. This means that the redirection is temporary and the client should expect the original URL to become valid again at some point in the future. Okay, so this is about the 302. Now coming to 304, this is like status code is 304, status name is not modified, and in the description we can say that the requested resource has not been modified since the last request, and the server does not need to send a new copy. The client should use its cached copy. Okay, so let's say the client is going to hit one API or trying to hit one URL, okay, and the requested resource has not been modified since the last request. So last time, let's say the client has hit that URL 3 days before, okay, and it is the client is again hitting it today, but the response is not being modified from last 3 days. Okay, so in that case you can use 304 as a status code. So this is what we are saying here. The requested resource has not been modified since the last request, and the server does not need to send a new copy. The client should use its cached copy. Okay, the status code help to optimize the performance and reduce the unnecessary data transfer between the client and the server, particularly in the scenario where the resource does not change frequently. Okay, so this is where you can use 304. Now coming to the next family of HTTP status code, which is 4xx, which is client error responses. These status code indicate that there was an error in the client request, and the main 4xx family status codes are 400, which is bad request, 401, which is unauthorized, 403, which is forbidden, and 404, which is not found. So I have not mentioned 403 here, but we'll discuss that as well. Now let me try to go to the next slide and discuss about the 400 first. So the status code is 400 and the status is bad request. In the description we can say that the server cannot process the client request due to the client error, such as malformed syntax or invalid data. So let's say you are going to try to insert one entity in your database through a POST API. So let's say you are going to insert a product in your database through the POST API that you have created, and that product has 4 attributes in its entity like ID, name, price, and the quantity. And when you are going to hit that POST API of that product, which is going to insert that product in your DB, you have to provide the entity, you have to provide the details of that particular products, okay, like ID, name, price, and the quantity. All of the 4 fields you have to provide in the request as a payload. But let's say you are missing any of the parameters, any of the columns, like ID you are missing, or you are missing price. In that case, it will not take your request and it will give you a bad request. That means it will return you the 400 error. Okay, so that is what we are saying here. The server cannot process the client request due to the client error, such as malformed syntax or invalid data. The common reason for encountering a 400 bad request errors includes, these are the following common reasons for encountering the 400, like malformed syntax in the request, such as missing or incorrect headers, invalid HTTP methods, or improper formatted request body, missing required parameter or headers, parameters or the data in the request that does not adhere to the expected format or are outside of the accepted range. So let's say you have set the price of the product or the quantity of the product to some extent. Let's say the quantity you have set to 10 at max, but you are providing 11 as a quantity, so that won't work, okay, because it is outside of the acceptable range. That will give you the 400. Okay, this last one is security restriction or the authentication issue preventing the server from processing the request. So these are the possible scenarios where you will get the 400 HTTP status code. Now let me try to go to the next slide and discuss about the 401, which is unauthorized. So the status code is 401, status is unauthorized. In the description we can say that the request requires user authentication. The client must provide valid credential to access the requested resource. So let's say you have created one API and the client has to provide a valid user ID or the password or the token in order to access that request, in order to access that API. But the client does not provide those things there. The client is not providing the valid user ID, password or token. Then in that case, the client will get 401, which is unauthorized error. Okay, so when a server returns a 401 status code, it often includes a www authentication header in the response specifying the authentication method supported by the server. This header inform the client about the type of authentication required, like basic, digest, bearer. Okay, allowing the client to resend the request with the proper credential. So let's say you have set the bearer, like you are going to hit the API and you are using a token in order to access that API, and you are not setting that token. In that case, you will get 401. Okay, the common reason for encountering a 401 unauthorized error includes accessing a protected resource without providing the authentication credential, providing invalid or expired authentication credentials or token, you can say, using incorrect authentication methods or the formats. So these are the possible reasons you will get the 401. Now let me try to go to the next slide and discuss about the 403. So this is the status code is 403, status name is forbidden, and let me try to first tell you how this is different from 401. So in the 401, it is unauthorized. You have to provide the valid credentials or valid tokens in order to access that API. But in the case of 403, the user is going to, the client is going to hit that API. In that case, the server knows the person who is hitting the API, but that person does not have the proper access, or you can say the legal access to that particular API. In the case of 401, the server does not know the client who is accessing the API. But in the case of 403, the server knows who is accessing the API, but the person who is accessing the API does not have the legal access to access that API. Okay, so this is about the 403, which is forbidden. In the description, we can say that server understood the client request but refuses to authorize it. Access to the requested resources forbidden. Common reason for encountering a 403 forbidden error includes lack of necessary permission to access the resource, access restriction imposed by the server such as IP address blocking or user agent blocking, authentication credentials provided by the client do not have sufficient privilege to access the resource, access control list or the other security mechanism that explicitly deny access to the certain client or the users. So this is the 403, and we have discussed about the difference between 401 and 403 as well. Now coming to the 404, the status code is 404, name is not found. In the description we can say that the server cannot find the requested resource. It may be temporarily unavailable, moved or deleted. So the client is going to hit one API and that API is not available as of now. In that case, you will get the 404. Common reason for encountering a 404 not found error includes the requested URL does not correspond to any existing resource on the server. Okay, the resources has been moved to a different URL without proper redirection. The resources have been deleted or removed permanently, and the server is unable to process the request due to misconfiguration on the server side. Okay, so this is about the 404. Now let me try to go to the next family of HTTP status code, which is 5xx, which is server error responses. This status code indicates that there was an error on the server side while processing the request. So simply this includes all the errors coming from the server side. Example 500, which is internal server error, 502, which is bad gateway, and 503, which is service unavailable. So let me try to discuss about the 500. So the status code is 500 and the status name is internal server error. In the description, we can say that the server encountered an unexpected condition that prevented it from fulfilling the client request. Common reason for encountering a 500 internal server error includes the bugs or the error in the server-side application, problem with the server configuration, issues with the database or the backend service, overloaded server resource such as CPU or the memory, and temporary disruption or the outage in the network connectivity. So these are the possible reasons when you will get the 500. And now let me try to go to the next slide and discuss about the commonly encountered HTTP status code. So like 404, 401, 500, 200, these are the commonly encountered HTTP status code, you can say, and most of them we have covered. Now let me try to go to the next slide and discuss about the best practices for handling HTTP status codes. So these are the main points that I have listed down here that you should use for handling HTTP status codes. So always handle status code appropriately in your application. Provides meaningful error messages to the users when error occurs. Implement proper redirection when necessary. Monitor and analyze the status code to identify and troubleshoot the issues. So these are the best practices that you can use while handling the HTTP status codes. Now coming to the conclusion, we can say that HTTP status codes are essential for understanding the outcome of a client request. Okay. Familiarity with these codes help in diagnosing and resolving the issue effectively. By adhering to the best practices, developer can ensure a smoother user experience and better system reliability. So this is the conclusion that we can draw from this whole discussion. Now what I will do, I will try to go to the EnggAdda and try to develop one application and then show you where you can use these codes. So let me try to come out of it and try to go to the EnggAdda. So here you can see that if you are following me, I have covered this CRUD application so many times. We have discussed this thing, how to develop the CRUD application in a Spring Boot application so many times, right? If you don't know how to develop a Spring Boot application and how to develop the CRUD APIs in that Spring Boot application, then you can watch out videos on my channel. I will provide the link of a particular video where I have discussed about the CRUD operation in the Spring Boot application, and there you can watch it out and then try to practice it out. So I'm not going to freshly create the Spring Boot application here. I already have created this Spring Boot application, and I'm going to give you the overview of this application, and then I will try to show you where you can use the HTTP status code. So you can see that this is a Spring Boot CRUD application, and let me start from the entity. So here you can see that we have created one entity called product, and it has 4 attributes: ID, name, price, and the quantity. And it is interacting with the table product, which is there in my database. Now coming to the second layer, which is repository. So here we have created the product repository, which is extending the JPA repository, and in the argument we are providing the entity name and the ID type of the entity. So if you go to the entity, the ID type is integer, so that is what we are passing here. So this is the repository layer. Now coming to the service layer, you will find this product service interface where I have listed down all these 4, or you can say the 5 CRUD methods. The first one is getting all the product from the DB. Second one is inserting the product into the DB. And the third one is getting out the product by the ID from the DB. The fourth one is updating the product into the DB based upon the ID. And the fifth one is deleting the product based upon the ID. And if you go to the implementation package, this is the implementation of the product service interface. And here we have implemented all the 5 methods. Okay, now if you go to the controller, in the controller we are calling this product service methods. So how we are calling it out? We have auto-wired the product service here, and with the help of that we are directly calling those methods here. So we have these 5 APIs developed. The first one is trying to find out all the products from the DB. Second one is inserting the product into the DB. Third one is finding out the product based upon the ID. Fifth one is updating the product based upon the ID. And the fourth one is updating the product based upon the ID. Fifth one is deleting the product based upon the ID. So this is the whole application. Now if you go to the application.properties file, here you will find that we are setting all the connections with the database. So we have provided the URL, we have provided the username and the password, and here are some JPA configuration. Okay, so and the port number that I have set for this application is 9000. So by default port number of the Spring Boot application would be 8080, but here we have set to 9000. So these are the things that we have did, and this is how we have developed this application. Don't worry if you are new to this. I will provide you one video where you can go and watch it out how to develop a Spring Boot application and how to develop the CRUD operation there. Now coming to this product controller, where we have listed out all the APIs, you will find how we can use the status code here. So here you can see that the first API, which is getting out all the product from the DB, is returning OK status code. You can see that. So we have set the status code as OK, and we are returning in the body, we are returning all the products. So let me try to first hit this API, then you can be more clear on how the status code is working. So let me try to open the Postman here and try to run this application and try to hit the first API first. Okay, so it will take few seconds, don't worry on that. So you can see that our application is up on the port number 9000. Now if you'll go to the Postman, here let me try to first see the class level mapping, which is API products. So copy this, and our application is up on the port number 9000. So let me try to do the things here. So our application is up on the port number 9000. Now it is API products. Yeah, API products. Now you want to find out all the products from the DB, and it is a get method. So just try to hit it, and here you will get that status code, which is 200. So we are getting the successful response, and we are setting the status code to 200. Now if you will come here to your application, you will see that this is the class level mapping, and this is the API that we are hitting. In this API we are getting all the product from the DB. Now if you will go here to this method get all products, it will go to the service method. Inside the implementation you will find that it is using this product repository to call the find all method provided by the JPA. And here we have auto-wired the product repo in the product service implementation class. So this is the whole layer, like we are coming from the controller layer to the service to the repository. Okay, so this is the whole flow. Now what we are doing here is we are getting all the product from the DB, we are storing it out in this variable, and we are returning the response entity here and setting the status code as OK, which is 200, and then in the body we are returning this response. So if you'll go to this status code class, enum you can say, which implement the status HTTP status code. Here you will find all the status code that we have discussed in the PPT. So you can see that we have the continue, we have 101, which is switching protocol, we have processing, which is 102. If you go down, you will find this 2xs class of HTTP status codes like 200, 201, 202, 204. There are so many. Now if you go, you will find this 300 or 3xx family of HTTP status code, you can say. You will find the 400 as well, and you will find the 500. So all the status code are listed out here. You can come here and try to see what is the name and what is the work of those status code. You can see those things here. So you can go to this enum and you can say HTTP status class and then try to see the things, how it is being written and how it is working. What is the status code for which functionality. So you can come here and try to read. Okay. Now if we'll go to the controller, you can see that we are returning this okay, and we are getting the successful response here. So the request is giving a successful response. That means you have to return a 200, and that is what we are setting as a status here, and that is what we are getting here in the Postman. You can see this. Now if we'll go down here, you can see that this is the post API, which is inserting a product into the DB, and for that we have discussed that it should be 201. So if it is post or put API, if we'll go to the PPT, here you will find that. You will find that when it is 201 which is created, you can see that when you can use the 201, the request has been fulfilled and resulted in a new resource being created. In that case, you have to use the 201, and this is what this insert API is doing. It is creating a new product into the DB. That is why we are using this created here. So if you'll go to this Postman and if you'll try to insert one product here, so let me try to copy this product details. So if you'll go down till 15 we have inserted. So let me try to insert one product here. So how we can do that? And go to the body, and here you have to, JSON is there. Yeah, let me try to remove this, put it here. Let's say the ID is 16, and let's say we want to, like, product name is magazine 1 and quantity is 1 and price is 1000. Now if we'll go, let me try to recheck these things. So what is the API that we need to hit? The class level mapping is API products, and then we are going to hit this post API, which is insert. So copy this insert, come here to the Postman and paste it out. So what we are doing is this is the API that we are going to hit. It is a post API, and this in the payload, in the body you have to provide the payload. That means the details of the product that you are going to insert, and I think magazine 1 is already there. Let me try to do magazine 2 and insert it. Now here you can see that the status code is 201. That means the request has been fulfilled and resulted in a new resource being created. So this is what we are returning here. Okay. So this is how you can use the HTTP status code. Now if you'll go to this third one, which is you can say finding out the product based upon the ID, and here we have set it out the HTTP status code as a OK. Similarly, for update, which is trying to create a new resource or trying to update the resource, we are using created. And here you can see that in the delete we are using created, which is not the way. You can use this 204 law. So let me try to go there and try to show you the 204 here. So you can see that 204 is a successful HTTP status code, but it is used for no content. So when you are not returning anything, then you can use the 204. So if you'll go here to the controller, if you are returning nothing here as a response, in that case you can use 204. But here we can see that we are returning the deleted product. That is why I have used the created here, but you can use the no content and try to return void from here. Okay, so just let's say void, and in the body try to run this again and try to delete the 16 product that we have inserted, and then see the result. So this application is up. Now go here, and what is the API? It is delete by ID. So just copy this, come here and select the delete. Delete, and then you have to provide the ID 16 and then delete it. So here you can see that no content, and in the response we are not returning anything. So this is how you can use the no content HTTP status code. Now coming to the others status code, what you can do is according to the discussion, according to the use cases, you can design your API and put the status codes there. Okay, so let me try to give you one sample example how you can do the thing. So let me try to use this get mapping here, create one get mapping, let's say test, and it is returning something a string. Yeah. Let's say test, and here we are returning some sort of string here. Let's say so let's say you want to use the 100 HTTP status code. So how you can use it? So first of all, you have to go to this HTTP status code class and try to use the 100. And what is the phrase of that HTTP status code is it is continue, right? So let me try to put the continue in the body, and here just use continue, and yeah, we don't need anything, so we are just simply testing it out. Now let me try to run this and try to go to the Postman and try to hit this test API that we have developed. It is a get API, so change this method type to get and try to hit it. Now because it is a continue, it will take much time, so you have to wait. I think it will time out or what, just wait. So when you can use continue, it is when like user has hitted the request, and in the server the request is being received, but it is taking more time to retrieve the response and send back to the user. In that case you can use the continue, and there, like, that is why it is taking much time. And when we have used the continue here in the API, you can see this. So yeah, just wait and then see. So you can see that it is not giving us a response, but yeah, it was taking much more time, and it was putting our API on continue. So if you'll go to this console, you will see this error socket hang up. So yeah, this is how you can use the continue. Now if you want to use the others one, let's say protocol, switching protocol. So just try to paste it here, run this again and try to hit the test. Just wait for a few seconds. Started. So here you can see that in the status code we are getting this 101, which is switching protocol. This means that the requester has asked the server to switch protocol, and the server is acknowledging that it will do so. So this is how you can set your HTTP status code in your API. according to the purpose, according to the use cases, you have to use those status codes. Okay, so this is one of the example I have showed you. When you are going to develop your application, according to the need, you can use this status code. This is the way you can use the status code. Okay, so this is the video, guys. If you like the video, please hit the like button. Please subscribe the channel for more such content. And if you are liking the videos on this channel, please support this channel by joining the channel, and also please try to share my videos as much as possible to your friend in need. Okay, thanks.